Well, hello friends, and welcome to another video. You guys probably know from the title what this video is going to be, but I did just kind of want to talk a little bit about the mini cut that I just finished. In my last video, my full day of eating obviously was the last day of my mini cut. If you haven't watched that video, I highly recommend going to watch it. But now I am going into a reverse and then obviously a lean growing phase until I start prep, which will be in 2020. That's kind of the game plan. So I've just gotten a lot of questions kind of about my mini cut, everything from why I decided to do it, to how it went, the duration, how drastic it was. But I didn't really talk much about it on here or on Instagram, which if you guys don't follow me on Instagram, I highly recommend following me there. I just post a lot more on Instagram than on YouTube. It is kind of like my main platform. I really didn't talk about it much, which I think came as a surprise to people because I do tend to be someone who is a super open book and I share everything, like the ups and downs, the ins and outs of my life. Even my prep, I was very, very open about my macros, the cardio I was doing, the things I was struggling with, etc. I was posting about it all the time on Instagram and on here. And that's just kind of how it's been for the past 2.5, 3 years. I think it's almost been like 3 years since I've had this channel, which is crazy. With this cut, I really did not feel compelled to share it at all. And I think that's for a few reasons. And the main one, I think, is that I have shared everything for a really long time. My fitness journey and what I'm doing and competing and just like training, how I eat, etc. is all something that I honestly do for myself. And when it is your full-time job, it's really easy for it to become not about you. And I just wanted to step away from that. Like, I wanted this cut to be about me. And I think that that's one thing I realized, especially coming out of my prep, is how much extra pressure it put on me to be sharing everything and doing physique updates all the time and macro updates all the time and having to explain every little thing to every person, because whenever you put anything out there, there's a million questions that come in. And I enjoyed sharing it, but I think it did add a lot of extra pressure to me. And obviously it's not anyone's fault. It's not like, oh, it's your guys' fault for like being there. Like, it's something that I chose to share and it's pressure that I put on myself, just like thinking you guys are thinking certain things or thinking you guys are expecting certain things. But it did kind of take a lot of just like the fun out of it for me. And I think when it came to stepping on stage, I was so stressed my show day morning because I felt like I had something to live up to. And with a mini cut, obviously, like, there's nothing that I have to like prove or had to accomplish or anything like that. But I think I just wanted to be able to do it for me and not have to explain everything. I think the other thing is when I took a step back away from tracking for a while, it kind of helped put things in perspective, just in terms of I am so much more than someone who tracks their macros and competes and goes to the gym. Honestly, those 12 weeks of not tracking changed my life. Like, they changed my perception of everything, and I think they made me realize, like, tracking macros, it's not that serious. Like, all of this fitness stuff, like, it's so not that serious. And I think when I start revolving all of my content around that stuff, it makes me feel like that, like that is everything, and that's all I'm putting out there. And there's so much more I want to put out there. Like, there's just so much more to me. And I always tell you, like, the least significant thing about you, the least interesting thing about you is what you look like. And like, I don't give a shit what anyone else is doing. Like, everything should be about you, right? Like, your fitness journey is about you, and I wanted to keep mine about me, and I want you guys to keep yours about you, and I want to be able to put information out there. And I understand that me sharing my journey helps a lot, but I think there's just other stuff I feel like I can put out there that's more helpful, if that makes sense. Now, the last thing is just, honestly, when I cut, I'm a lot more hesitant to share it than when I'm growing, just because there are always those people who come across my Instagram or my YouTube who haven't seen my whole journey. I know it's not my fault if people take what I'm doing and use it for themselves if I disclaim it, but it's still just like, does not feel good. Obviously different when you're growing and you're like, okay, like if this person follows my macros, like they're probably gonna just grow. But just as far as my mini cut went, so a lot of people were like, why did you do it? And a lot of you guys know I reversed out of my prep. Food got really, really high. I think I was around like 400 grams of carbs, like 90 grams of fat or something like that. And I did start to grow. I think I was like 10 pounds up from stage weight, which honestly, I think that in your off season, most people need to get higher than that. But then I was like, okay, I'm healthy. My hormones are healthy. My hunger hormones are regulated. Like I feel very comfortable where I'm at. And the thought of focusing on a physique goal, like it was just stressing me out, and I was just so not aligned with that. I was like, I just want a break from trying to change my body. I want a break from tracking macros and revolving my life around that. And obviously flexible dieting is flexible, but it's not that flexible. Like if you're tracking macros, like you are to some degree revolving your life around food. And if you have physique goals, I'm not going to say it's not essential to do that. If you want to put on muscle, you are going to have to eat in a surplus, and that means eating more than your body needs or is telling you to eat, right? If you're trying to lose body fat, you're going to have to eat less than your body needs. And it is really hard to do that, and it's really hard to gauge that and not eat like a total asshole because you're telling yourself you're bulking and you're gonna put on a ton of excess body fat, or drop things way too low if you're trying to cut and end up digging yourself into a hole and causing metabolic damage, hormonal damage, losing muscle, etc. You do need to be on top of food and monitor your food if you want to make physique progress ever. But I just wanted a break from focusing on my physique. I think something that did give me a bit of anxiety is I was like, I, for the past few years, have been really focusing on this goal of getting on stage. And obviously that is not something anyone does for forever, right? And I have this identity as being a competitor, as being someone in this fitness space. And I'm well aware that even being a coach, like who's gonna sign up for coaching when I'm 40 years old and wrinkly? Like no one, right? Who's going to, like I'm not gonna compete for forever. Like let's say I get my pro card, I go to the Olympia, it's like then what? And I think it scared me that I didn't have much of an identity outside of fitness stuff. I also was moving, and I think I lived somewhere where I was pretty isolated. I was like, I want to like form relationships. I want to focus on that. I want to focus on my business. I want to really dig deep and figure out who I am and what I want to offer this world beyond just fitness stuff. Like I was literally having anxiety attacks. So that's why I stopped tracking for a while. And I think throughout that phase, obviously I really learned to trust my body. It was so nice for me to not focus on a physique goal, and I was really able to just kind of shift my perspective away from focusing so much on the short-term picture and just like the small little bubble of fitness influencers and competing and whatnot. I finally, like, I got the itch back. I like having that goal, right? And so I think it was like 12 to 14 weeks or something of me not tracking. I just didn't want to focus on it. I just wanted to live my life. But when I talked to Nick and we were kind of deciding what direction to go, we had me just track kind of what I was eating for a week, which I did. And then we kind of like started just me being consistent, so tracking macros for like a week or so after that. And my macros are pretty high. I think I was eating like 70 to 80 grams of fat, over 300 grams of carbs, and like 140 to 150 grams of protein. Going into my next stage, obviously I need to grow going into my next prep. There was the option of doing this prep with Melissa, and I thought about it because I like had the itch. I was like, I'm ready to freaking grind after taking all that time off. But I wouldn't have a super different physique. Like I literally just like trained hard, but I kind of like dinked around for a few months, right? And I definitely have put on some muscle since my last prep. My food was in a really high position, but I wouldn't step on stage with a totally different physique. So why would I do that, right? So therefore I need to take this time until I get on stage next year to grow, because I have big goals for next year. So if you're starting a growing phase at like over 300 grams of carbs and you want to grow consistently for 6, 7, 8 months, it's gonna be really, really hard to do that, especially if your metabolism's as adaptive as mine, right? So I have to increase food pretty frequently, and my food has to get very, very high for me to put on size in the past. Who knows how it'll go this time. But we didn't want to run into phases of having to pull back food and kind of step back because my digestion gets messed up or my insulin sensitivity gets messed up because of all the food I'm forcing down, right? But I think we want to make sure that, again, I can grow consistently. Mentally, it's just hard, it's draining to be like gaining 10 pounds and then losing 10 pounds and then gaining 10 pounds within like a few months. And I don't want to do that. I really don't want to go through bulk cut phases. I would rather just grow very, very slowly and consistently into my next prep. And we want to keep body fat to a minimum because the other thing is going into my last prep. I think I lost over 30 pounds in 18 weeks. My last prep, and it freaking sucked. Like, if you haven't watched my prep videos, go watch my prep videos because there was phases where I have a great coach, but I was eating 20 grams of carbs doing like 2 hours of cardio a day at points during my prep because I had to get the weight off. And I don't want to start a prep from that position again. So I think we also thought starting from a leaner position, my body would be primed to grow because when you're in a deficit, your body wants to hold on to everything, right? So you're primed to build muscle and primed to hold on fat if you don't reverse correctly. But we thought it would reprime my body to grow. We thought it would allow me to start from a leaner position and grow more consistently. And also it helps starting with a lower food intake so my food doesn't have to get super freaking high. So that was kind of the reasoning behind it. During my cut, I did not lose a ton of weight. What I will say is, I think I only lost like 4 or 5 pounds during my cut. Yeah, like 4.5 pounds during my cut. So it wasn't a ton of weight. It was only 6 weeks. And it was pretty drastic for that reason, right? Now, when you cut, if you are super drastic, you are probably going to lose some muscle mass. You're going to slow down your metabolism, right? Now, we kind of wanted my metabolism to downregulate. But as far as muscle loss, if you're only doing it for 4, 5, 6 weeks, you're not gonna lose a ton of muscle, right? So that's kind of why we were more drastic. We didn't want to spend a ton of time cutting because that gives me less time to grow, if that makes sense. Now, we stopped the cut a couple weeks early. We kind of had a weight goal. It was like 2 pounds lower than I got, just because my body wasn't responding. And it was one of those things where we were like, okay, we need to keep the big picture in mind. Like, I'm very lean and I'm well aware of that, and obviously my coach knows that as well, and you can see it in my pictures. A lot of body recomp happened just from me being consistent. Like, even the first week of my cut, but my body looked so different. We knew I was plenty lean, and we wanted to give myself time to grow. So it's like, why drill myself into the ground just to lose a couple more pounds? And we kind of accomplished the goal of like repriming me to grow. And I definitely got my fix. And I think this is the other thing of like, I was ready to freaking grind, right? Like I told you, I was ready to jump into a prep grind. And so I think I did have like that itch, which is something I don't want to leave out either. Like, part of me just wanted to freaking cut. So that's why he was like, okay, let's just up food, keep the big picture in mind. And that's something like I preach all the time with my clients. And I think like that's the reason coaches have coaches, right? It's so important to have someone who can be objective. And like the minute my coach said that, I was like, well, duh. And I think for me on this cut, I didn't even realize how like worn out I was. Like that day I was vlogging, like I was a freaking zombie. And I was like it never hit me, but I looked like a pancake, which I told you guys, but I don't think I realized how just tired I was. I'm not someone who I get like super hungry. It is my energy that like tanks when I'm dieting. That's kind of why we ended my cut. I told you guys I would do a physique update, and what I'll say is I suck. I just filmed this morning, so it's almost a week later, and I am like 2 days out from my period. So my weight is up a couple pounds. It literally started like the day after I filmed my last video, my whole like PMS symptom shit. So I'm like, this is great timing. And that's kind of why I waited to film it. I was like, maybe it'll go away and I'll stop being super bloated, but it hasn't. My uterus still feels like it's about to fall out of my body. I'm sitting like 2 pounds up from where I was at the end of my cut, which isn't real weight. Like, it's water, but you know, figured some physique update was better than none, so I'm gonna overlay that here. But I'm definitely lean. I am ready to grow. I'm so excited to get like jacked. I do feel a bit just like small. Like my glutes are really small. They shrink always when I'm dieting. I really want to work on my glutes. My hamstrings are pretty prominent, but I really want to work on my tie-in. I really want to work on my upper back, so like my lats and my rear delts. My rear delts and my glutes are what the judges mostly said. So that is another thing I want to work on. I also really want to make sure that I'm prioritizing training abs, just because last time when I cut, you could see them because I was super lean, but I definitely think I could have a stronger, better core, and it's honestly just my fault for not training it. But it's hard when you're bulking because you can't like see your abs, so you're like, why train them, right? But I am gonna prioritize that as well. So that's kind of where we're at. As far as macros, my coach upped me a lot. He upped me like 100 grams of carbs and 10 grams of fat coming out of my cut. So right now I'm 250 carb, 150 protein, 50 fat. At the end of my cut, I was 150 carb, 40 fat, 150 protein. So that it's kind of a difference. I also have a free meal now, so we definitely upfood a lot. But I did just want to update you guys. This is definitely way longer than I was intending, but I hope it was helpful. Comment, share, like, subscribe. Let me know what you guys want to see in this growing phase. And yeah, I'll see you guys in the next one.